not responsible for this title, it's less than snappy. The title of the session is Automated Assessment Tools to Support Student Learning and Improving Instructor Workflow. And I am delighted to present our first speaker, Mitchell R. Wild from Monash University in Melbourne. And because he's just flown in, he didn't tell you about, he's just flown in from Europe this morning. But he's very wide. And his title is Creating Scalable Statistical Quizzes with moodlequiz and R Markdown.
Thank you. I hope I don't fall asleep mid-presentation at least, but we'll see. And I think on the title here, I hope this improves your instructor workflows, especially when it comes to creating quizzes. If you use R Markdown or literate programming, this will be particularly of interest. If you don't, maybe you'll find some value in starting to use these tools as well for your statistics more generally, but also for your teaching. So I want to focus on how I use quizzes specifically in the forecasting class that I've taught with Rob Heinemann and Georgia Thanasopoulos for about 10 years now. We use quizzes in two main ways, and we started using quizzes quite recently in the past couple of years. The first way is with some low-stakes weekly quizzes. And this was a very intentional choice with the rise of AI. We wanted to make this really low risk for the students to encourage them to do it themselves. We didn't want to punish students that wanted to do the work themselves and maybe get the wrong answer compared to students that were just putting it into a tool and getting good enough answers to perform better. So the idea with these quizzes was that it would give them instant feedback automatically. They would have unlimited attempts for the whole week to try and learn and make mistakes and grow. And the added secret benefit to this is that we could see all of their attempts. It wasn't so secret, it's not like privileged information, but we could see where they got wrong and what they really needed to have a few goes at to improve. And that helped us in the following week when we did our recaps to say, hey, you guys had trouble with this part of the content from last week. Here's a refresher. I'll give you a look at how they appeared. I'm not sure how privileged this is, but this is the actual unit from last year. And you can see we've got quizzes for each of the weeks. And you might notice there's some copies here. These quizzes were so popular with the students because they were only open for that 1 week. They asked us to reopen them for their revision for the exam. So we had to copy them all without any deadlines or time restrictions. This is the week 5 quiz. You can see I'm trying to hide all the names and such here, so I won't scroll around. But there's 758 attempts on this quiz. But we only have 290 students enrolled in the course. So the students are attempting this several times, usually on average 2.5, thereabouts. And that's evidence to me that they're making mistakes the first time, that they're not using AI tools to answer that for them. They're sort of only cheating themselves if they were to do that. Here's one of the students' attempts. This was not cherry-picked in any way. I just opened that quiz, and this was the first one that came up. I've anonymized the student, but you can see their first attempt, they took a while thinking about the problem. These are very short quizzes. Again, we wanted to make it quite low cost in terms of the grade we associate with it, but also their time, because we're doing so many of these quizzes. So 20 minutes is perhaps more than I expected for a student to take on this, but it tells me that they've worked quite hard on it, and they've done quite poorly at it as well, at least their first go around. The second attempt, 4 minutes, tells me that they've actually read through the automated feedback and had that cognitive load, that critical thinking to understand why they've had it been wrong in certain attempts, and tried it again and did much better the second time around. And then the other times they probably just said, oh, I was wrong, let's try it again. Maybe some more guesses perhaps. If I scroll down on this one, you can see the overall final grade after all of the attempts for each of the students. And almost all the students are getting 100% for these quizzes. It's not meant to discriminate based on their performance. It's made so that they can learn it along the way. And they're motivated with a very small amount of grades, but that seemed quite effective for us. The other type of quiz that we have is the exam. So during the pandemic, Monash swapped to using Moodle quizzes for the exam platform. They brand it as e-assessments or some separate platform, but it's the same guts internally. And for an exam, it's quite different need. We don't want a short targeted quiz. We instead want something that's quite rich with lots of examples, figures, data sets, stories, and all those results need to be provided for the students. because they don't have access to R, they can't run the code themselves. We need to give them the code and the results for them to review it. A few different types of quiz questions that we have here, multiple choice for some instant marking, but most of them are essay-style responses for them to interpret, explain, and analyze what we've shown them. Another thing that is perhaps unusual for Moodle quizzes is that we allowed them to take photos of their written equations. We didn't expect them to write LaTeX for their math equations. And the Moodle quiz software that I'll show today allows it to work with extension quiz questions like this photo type. So you can use it with any type of question built into Moodle or not. So an example of what those quizzes look like, I really probably shouldn't be showing this one. This is the exam from last year. You can see we have code immediately followed by the plot. If you're familiar with R Markdown, Quarto, or literate programming, this will look very familiar, except for the fact that it's in Moodle. That might seem a bit magic. Also familiar to these, but those that use literate programming, cross-references work as well. This is like an unexpected win. So if I click on figure 3, it will take me correctly to figure 3. But here we have an essay-style question, another essay, one of the close-style fill-in-the-blank questions, quite a variety. And then moving to a different part of the exam when we're showing them models for time series forecasting, and we have them interpret the coefficients. You can see I've generated the same familiar output that they would usually see in their R console directly in the Moodle quiz for their exam. And in this question, we're asking them to write out the equation for this model, so they were able to take a photo and upload it into that question after the exam concluded. So this is not standard procedure for Moodle quizzes, I suppose. This was a custom extension that the tool I'm going to describe today works with. So I think quizzes, especially for teaching statistics, are quite valuable. And the tooling is really important because a good statistics question needs quite a lot more information than a usual trivia question. We often need to provide some context for what data set, might need to show some equations, show some figures. There's all sorts of quite difficult things to put inside Moodle for asking the right question. And this rich content is quite cumbersome to create. So manually creating quizzes, I'm not sure if anyone has done this in an LMS before. I tried it for maybe half a question and immediately gave up and thought I need a better tool. And that's because it needs so much damn clicking. The amount of clicking is obscene, especially when you wanted to add all this rich context with the what you see is what you get editor, you click figure, you make a link. Oh my gosh, it's so painful. I'm going to bring you along with some pain for those that haven't suffered. So here's a little Moodle instance running on my computer. If I add a question, I'm going to count the clicks. So that's 1, 2 to add a new question. Maybe let's pick a multiple choice, 3, 4 to add it. Okay, let's call this penguin weights. What is the largest or fattest penguin? Okay, so I had to do a couple of clicks there for the fields. Imagine if I also wanted to put in the data set and I had to click a figure and browse and oh my gosh, no. A choice, let's say we've got the Adelie penguin. Oh, it's gone. There it is. We've got the chinstrap penguin. We've got the Gen 2 penguin. And if you know your Palmer penguins, the Gen 2 penguin is the fattest. So we'll click another couple of times in order to give that 100%. Save. And then maybe I can get out of this, a few more clicks, attempt. Okay, I've made my question. Quite a simple looking question. I'm missing a lot of the valuable bits that I want to show. How can I interpret what this is? Where's the figure to see which one is larger than the others? Hopefully I can convince you that that's a terrible workflow, especially when you wanted to create quizzes as rich as what we use in our exams. So I've gone through that. Another type of question, actually, I will go back for this, that I love to use, but it's utterly painful, is closed-style questions. Has anyone used embedded answers? A few shows of hands. Does anyone create them yourself from the text that they expect you to? A couple? Oh my gosh, I feel sorry for you. I won't show you the way to do it internally because I've got it here. you've got this curly brace that has a very almost like regular expression style encoding of the right and wrong answers, and it's different for each type. So there's a short answer, there's a number with some tolerance. So if they're within some range, they get half credit. This percent, 50% is representing 50% of the grade. 100% is 100% of the grade, but this one doesn't. It's all a bit confusing to me. There's quite a lot that you need to learn, and there's a whole doc page for that. And I hope to show you a much simpler alternative. There are some tools to avoid this syntax, but they still involve like clicking and dropping and copying and pasting, and it's all a bit much. Especially, actually, if I wanted to create one with as many closed style questions as this one. Each of these is a close input for choosing if a model is suitable or not. So what's the alternative? There's a few different input and output formats that Moodle knows how to speak. The main one that I am using is Moodle XML. And XML is fairly open and manageable, but it's not something that you want to create yourself. The Moodle XML docs explain how you might create it yourself, but it's not really meant for you to be typing it out. It's made for tools like the one I will share to generate. Moodle actually uses this when you're importing a question bank or exporting it to copy it across to another course. So it's pretty well supported and allows you to create pretty much any question that you might want in a quiz. There's a few tools that can directly create the XML format, but none of these really worked for the needs that I had. The exams package, for instance, has a separate file for each question, but I was creating hundreds of questions in the exam. So in comes literate programming. Does anyone know what literate programming is? Maybe if I called it Quarto, R Markdown, Jupyter, a few nods? Okay, maybe a show of hands, actually. Then I can skip some content otherwise. Okay, maybe about half of you, so I'll go through it a little bit quicker. Literate programming is the idea that you have your document with all your text that you want in it alongside the code that you want to run. So it mixes together both prose, which is usually written in the Markdown format, along with code, which can essentially be any language. So for us writing statistics reports or quizzes, we'd be using R, Python, Julia, and hopefully not MATLAB. And it can produce outputs in pretty much any format. So you'd have one common format for writing your report or writing your quiz, and you can return it into many different formats, say a HTML document. These slides, for instance, are made using Quarto with a HTML slide deck format. I've also written papers for PDF format, and I wrote the Word format paper for the proceedings for this paper associated with this work using Quarto. So there's many different systems. Lately, I've started using Quarto quite a lot, but this tool is written for R Markdown, and I am working on a variant that works for Quarto as well. Markdown Primer, it's a plain text way of marking up text. So here we have a header that's particularly relevant for the tool, but you can also mix in bold text with double asterisks, italics, put some links in there. I can tell you, entering a link like this is so much easier than clicking 4 times in order to add it in the what you see is what you get editor. If you love your LaTeX, you can also directly put in equations. Lists are quite simple. And this text, when rendered, will produce some marked up formatted text in whatever output format you decide. The code side of this can be entered in 2 ways. The first is with a code chunk. That's a block of code which returns a main output. So that's good for tables or figures. In this case, I'm using ggplot to plot some penguins, and there we can see the mass for that question that we needed. So this will nicely embed the figure immediately in context with where the code was. The other type of code is inline code, and this directly substitutes the result of the code in your text, in your sentence paragraph. So for example, if I wanted to compare the average mass or show the average mass of all the penguins, just in a sentence, I would use this inline code with a single backtick followed by the language. So this is really a pair that makes a lot of sense to go together because we're already programming in these languages and we want to write up reports. So rather than copying and pasting your figures across between, say, your R script and Word, or however you like to do your reporting, having it all in one place removes all of that copy and pasting and manual work. So putting back together the Markdown content and the R chunks, so here's a header, I've got some italics, I've got a code chunk, and I'm substituting in the average weight of the penguins, I might get an output like this. So you can see my figure is embedded. In this case, I've set echo false, so the code isn't shown, but it's optional. You can include the code for the plot if you'd like to. And you can see the average weight is embedded. So what I'm actually presenting today, it's not how to use literate programming. It's how we can use literate programming to generate quizzes. And this is with the Moodle quiz package. So it's a regular R Markdown approach, but instead of rendering to a PDF or a Word document, in this case, it's going to render to an XML format, perfect for importing to Moodle. With that XML, we can import it into the question bank, add some questions, add those questions from the bank into your quiz, and it's quite a quick process with less clicking in order to generate a complete quiz. So this format allows you to use a single document to put lots of different questions in there and allow you to share a common data set across different questions. And that's one of the issues I had with the exams package that many of you might have used before. Because it is question by question, that wasn't so easy to share a data set across an entire quiz. So how do we set up questions in this format? Well, the top level header here identifies a category just for organizing your sets of questions, especially if you want to randomly allocate groups of questions. And the second level headers identify individual questions. And the attribute here describes the type of the question. So we have description and close type questions, and optionally you could do essays as well. So description and close are the defaults. If it has a close question in it, it will default to a close. If it has no question at all, it's just a description. Other types you have to specify manually. Now, thinking back to that curly brace complicated close expression, because we're using programming here, we've got access to an R language, or any language really. We can write code to generate those strings for us. So there's a family of functions prefixed with close in order to generate those questions. And I particularly like this one because it automatically chooses the type of question suitable based on the class of the data. So if you put a number inside close, for example, what is the parameters of a standard normal, you just need to write close of 0 for the mean, close of 1 for the standard deviation or variance, and it will replace that with a fill in the blanks, expecting 0 and 1 numerically. If you had text for this, it would expect a short answer. And then if you had a second field, you can say what the options are, and it becomes multiple choice. So there's lots of different options, and I can't go through them all today, but you can look at the website to learn all the different ways to generate questions. Here's a complete example of a question, a quiz about the penguins. You can see I've got some markdown text, a figure, put in here with this PNG that gets embedded directly in the quiz, some summary output, and this inline output as well. So the questions are coming in. I've got substitution, for instance, for filling in the blanks for your R code. Let's actually try to upload this one. So I've rendered it here already. That's just using R Markdown render. And if I go into the quizzes, this time starting a new quiz, and I'm going to import questions from the question bank to the question bank in an XML format. Then I can just drag this output. When you render it, it also gives you the instructions here as a HTML in case you forget all this. And if I import this, it's imported those 3 questions. So here they are there. And then going back, now they're in a question bank, so if you've used Moodle before, this would all be familiar. I was testing this before and didn't clean up after myself. So I've already added them here, but you go add from question bank, and then you can find the penguins category with all the 3 questions that we wanted. So I can click select all and add questions to the quiz, and then that would all appear here nicely formatted. And I get this very rich output that you'd expect from R Markdown or literate programming that embeds the questions and answers as perhaps drop-downs or whatever format you specified. The other advantages of using R Markdown for this is it's very reusable. If you wanted to update the quiz for some new data set or randomize it in some way, you could just replace the data that went into it. There's also a way to generate multiple replicates of the quiz. If you had some random sampling, you can generate a different quiz for each student. So in summary, for educators, it's so much faster to create these quizzes with these tools. It's much richer to incorporate your figures and tables, and you can randomize it to prevent some cheating if you're worried about that. For students, they loved it. The immediate feedback, the lots of practice, and they really said that it improved their understanding. This is a quote from one of our feedbacks from last year. In the year before, actually, I tested it with just a couple of quizzes, and the students were like, more of this, please. That was the best part. So then this last year, I added it all, and sure enough, the feedbacks was like, thank you for the quizzes. So that's all I've got. Do try out low-pressure quizzes if you're concerned about AI and really concerned mostly about student learning. Reducing the pressure, reducing the cost of failure, I've found is most effective for preventing students from using AI, encouraging them to learn. You can install the package from CRAN with install packages Moodle quiz. And just an aside, because this is all text-based, we can turn this around and use Claude or LLMs to generate these quizzes for you as well. So I'll take any questions if we've got time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mitchell. We have time for a couple of questions, Mitchell. The gentleman here.
Thank you. Does it have the capability to do carryover mistakes? So if a student makes a mistake in a certain part, can it carry over the mistake?
I'm not sure. I've not experimented with this. It can support anything that Moodle can support. So if Moodle XML allows you to do it, I can confidently say yes. It might require some more configuration where you add the attributes. So if you not only can you do type equals essay, you can also set the amount of marks that it is, and maybe there's some option there for the carry forward error.
Yes, thank you so much for this talk. We have done exactly the same.
Fantastic.
But in Canvas and Iceflow. So I think we need to compare our notes.
Good.
Afterwards.
I think Emmy should chat as well, because Emmy was playing around with the same idea with Canvas.
Yeah, it's a package. It's called the Examiner.
Examiner. Okay.
Examiner R package.
I have to look into it.
By Polygon.
Okay. Examiner.
So I'm just a user of this package, but he has done it to support my course.
Fantastic.
So it's exactly the same. I'm thrilled to hear you also present it because we have exactly the same experiences.
Great. I'll have to look into that.
Also, this makes us use Git or whatever to handle what you call it, version control.
Yes. And within our department, we've done a big shift between the manually produced quizzes that are really hard to update and migrating them to Moodle Quiz, especially because our exams are now using Moodle quizzes. And it's been really helpful for the department transitioning between educators year on year to have this common format that's not painful to work with. There's a question behind. Yeah.
So I saw you talk about this 2 years ago at ICOTS. My question for you was then until now, that's 2 years later. So the technical web questions, but how are you designing it? You've now been using this for a while. What is the actual ideas about how to create good questions, design good questions? So not just the tech that does it, but like, what is the advice for products around how to design it?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I've changed is those low cost, low risk quizzes since I last presented this. The content, the code, I should say, the package hasn't changed much since I last presented it. Just a few bug fixes here and there, and it got on CRAN since then. But we've been using it to really produce more quizzes that for student learning that aren't really attached to grades. And also, of course, our workflows for the exams, which is where most of the grades come into, has been very useful. But as for good quizzes, I think in today's age, either you lock them away from access to the internet so that they actually are tested on it for an exam, or you lower the stakes so that they actually try and repetitively experiment. So I found simpler quizzes working better. Yes?
Yes, I comment to that because it has been said in several sessions now that finding good data sets, finding good examples are the worst part. So by using this, you can also automatize making several quizzes based on the same datasets. For instance, you can take a subsample of the same dataset, so you can use the same introduction, the same way of thinking, but then you will give the students a slightly different way, slightly different questions based on the same setting.
Yes, and that's what we do for our major project for the course. We have a data set from the ABS, Australian retail turnover, and that's got 152 different categories across states and industries, and we just randomly allocate them by their ID, and throughout the semester they build on that as well.
Very practical question. You have access to your campus server. You are the one that, let's say, at UCLA, for example, campus is managed by university. So in our department, there's so much we can do to change it. We cannot change it.
Yeah, I personally don't use Canvas, but I know a lot of people in the room do.
We used Moodle before, and we could it comes from above.
Yes.
Right? It's a huge school, 50,000 students. So how do people that you have access to your server, right? You have to have a programmer that goes inside campus. So for somebody that doesn't have access like that, this cannot be used, right?
Yeah, you need some import or export access. So at least with Monash for our Moodle platform, they've blocked the API access, the automated way of creating the quizzes for you, but they still allow the import of XML or any format. So I think, Emmy, your university allows the API access, but maybe not the import. Yeah. So,
I've got something that access directly to Canvas. Same.
So there might be other ways in order to access and upload quizzes on Canvas.
So the IT person in our department, for example, at UCLA statistics department, the IT person will have to have this permission from the...
Yeah, they could probably guide you to what permissions you have and how you might be able to upload it.
You can actually, I don't know if it's the same for every institution, but yeah, in my Canvas, if you go to your profile, there's a way to generate the key. Same. So then you don't need IT to get involved.
No, well, it depends on how strong the security is.
Perhaps we can just fit in one last question from Emma here.
Yes, one very specific question with a follow-up. So you said you do like low stakes, multiple unlimited attempt quizzes. I'm wondering what low stakes is. And you also said that this is discouraging the use of AI to complete the quizzes. And I saw you can see like those attempts, you showed that example of that student. Have you looked at the data on how many students are just going in really quickly, doing one and getting full marks versus students that are actually attempting?
Yeah, most of them, it does take them some time for the first attempt. Because if they are using AI tools, they've really got to copy small bits and say where the blanks are. It's quite tedious to fill in the blanks with AI, especially if you've got these figures mixed in. And the tools have gotten better, especially since 2000 semester 1 last year for this. But I still think a simple copy and paste isn't so easy. You need to say where the blanks are and what type of output's possible. As for how valuable low stakes is, we had 10 quizzes and we took the top 8 of those. So even if you, of 2 quizzes, missed a couple of weeks or did poorly those weeks, they didn't count. And we scaled it up to 10% of the total grade. So it was like 1% per week as a participation almost.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mitchell.
Thank you, everybody.